them know who you are, what you do, and what brings you to this work. Why is this work important to you?
Okay, I can start. Dima Ghawi. I moved to Louisiana 5 years ago with IBM, but then I resigned my working for IBM and I started my own company. My work is focused on the advancement of individuals in leadership, specifically women. So part of the reason I'm here is because of all the work I do to empower women in leadership and to get them to advance.
Wonderful.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Shanta Harrison Proctor, serving in Governor John Bell Edwards' cabinet. I'm an entrepreneur as well, and I'm from Baton Rouge, moved away for many years, and somehow keep finding myself back in Louisiana to help. The people and the food are why I'm here. But on top of that, I'm excited. Thank you, Brandi, for the warm introductions. But I'm excited about the opportunities that Louisianians, particularly Louisiana women, have on the cusp of all the things that have happened this legislative session and the very recent history of our state. So look forward to sharing with these ladies today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vivian Broussard Guillory. I'm state president of AAUW of Louisiana. AAUW is a nationwide network of over 170,000 members, about 1,000 branches, over 800 college and university partners. I've been a member of this organization for about 12 years. It's over 100 years old. We've been collecting stats on equal pay for over 100 years, and I just sort of brought these for you to see because it's our research that's used in Congress and in states, legislators as here. So, we collect the data on equal pay, but on so many issues. Our mission is to fight for equity for women and girls through education, advocacy, research, and philanthropy. So we have about 400 members in Baton Rouge, and that's what brings me to this equal pay space. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but personally, I do have to say, when I sit up here now, I think of my mom being nearby. My mom and dad were raised on farms in St. Landry Parish. They did not, in the 20s and 30s, have an opportunity to get high school degrees. Education is a big part of what AAUW is involved in promoting. And my mother's always been my, biggest cheerleader, and she wanted me to be able to do so much more than she does. So she sent me to an all-girls school, K through 12. I was with the Ursulines, and so when I landed with this position, I hadn't thought about it before, but it's just sort of a natural fit that I'm going to fight for critical thinking and education and a better life for women and girls. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Sevetri and I am definitely a serial entrepreneur. I have 2 companies, the first Solid Ground Innovations, which is a management consulting firm, and then Exit Me Now, which is a software firm based in New Orleans. And I split most of my time between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and lately from coast to coast. So many things bring me to this space, one of which being an employer and being able to hire both women and men, and being able to sit across the table from them and see the challenges that they have in negotiating their pay or their salaries, or whether that is bonuses or for equity options for my software company, and the differences that I've seen there. I have on this floral dress because I was earlier today in New Orleans at a Color Change partnership with a board that I sit on called Citizen She, that advocates and essentially finances women who are running for office. And so I think that I have definitely been in this space for a while, helping to elect women, helping to really be an advocate for equality and equity as it relates to women and girls. And so I'm happy to be a part and to share more.
So before you get that away, because we talked about briefly before you got here the difference between equity and equality and how that works in this space. So I'd like you to expound on that.
Absolutely. I think that, now that we're here today in 2018, if you were to look at some of the larger corporations, whether that is Google, whether that's GE in New Orleans, whether that's formerly like Shaw Group here, CBI, and you're looking at these corporations through the Obama Act who essentially said we're going to begin to look at the numbers related to gender. I think maybe like 70 corporations signed up to do that. I think there may be a perception that just because we're in 2018 and you see more women faces, 50% of women are in the workforce, that, oh, there must be the same opportunities. People were obviously having the same opportunities because we were seeing our faces here and there. But when you start to really look at the numbers in executive leadership positions, when you start to look at the numbers in the legislature, in Congress, you begin to see a great imbalance, right? And I think that when we talk about the power that women have, the economic power that we have, versus the economic instability as it relates to us being able to go out and do the things that we normally do, whether that's raise our families, whether that's providing for them, whether that is being able to resource them to go off to college. That's where you begin to see the differences between like equity and equality, and why oftentimes people misinterpret them and use them interchangeably when they shouldn't be done like that.
Absolutely. So I saw a graphic that someone recently shared with us in our office that had crates. So equal level crates across. If everyone stands on those equal level crates, then we're talking about equality. Like we give everybody the same size crate. But everyone doesn't necessarily need the same size crate. So if we give everyone the same size crate, there's still going to be people who are taller or have more opportunities than other people on that same crate. It's almost like leaving them on the ground and having people have the same types of privilege and opportunity that they brought into that crate space, if you will.
Absolutely.
But you got to give them a different size crate. So my crate may need to be a little bit bigger because I'm a single mom raising a child who has to send them to college on my own versus someone who doesn't have that as an issue. So I think that equity versus equality conversation is extremely important. So thank you for sharing on that. Now, Vivian, I definitely want you to help us to set the stage for, from a data perspective, what we're looking at.
Absolutely. Equal pay is one of the most persistent issues affecting women today. It is real, it is persistent, and it is causing hardship for women. In 2016, among full-time workers working all year round, women were making 80% on the dollar to what their male counterparts were. In Louisiana, it's closer to 70%. The pay gap, so these are statistical facts that a pay gap exists. I want to begin by saying that because I think, we throw the word out, but it's a real number that's impacting Louisiana women. So any of you young women in here making about $34,000, what would your life be if you were making $51,000, which is the gap in Louisiana? What would it mean for housing, for health care, for paying back student loans? Because we know it takes women longer to pay back student loans. So it is real. Now, it affects women of all backgrounds, but depending on your background, it could affect you very differently. In terms of earnings, white non-Hispanic women and Asian women have the highest earnings. Asian men have the highest earnings among men. Latina women have the largest pay gap. If we compare them to the largest working demographic, that would be white male earnings. Latina women are making 54% of what white male earnings are. African American women are making 63%. So the pay gap affects all of us. It just may affect us in different ways, but it is real and it is persistent.
So since this is a very real issue that we have to address, let's talk about what specifics are going on in the state to address that issue. Which leads us right back over to Shanta.
Thank you. This earlier today, as we talked, I spoke with BPW Louisiana, and one of the things that I I've shared in my own personal experience is the pay secrecy issue in Louisiana. Pay transparency is one of the things that we fought on, and we always advocate for women to demand equal pay, pursue equal pay, but arming women and employees in general with the tools to be able to appropriately and adequately research employee wage data and their own various systems of employment has been a hurdle for Louisiana, not necessarily in the public sector because many of those are civil service and sort of tiered jobs, but then when you look at the private industry and even in my own personal experience as a professional in a high-level position that is an executive level management, I began to personally research data for my internal experiment on pay equity in our organization. And even in this position as the director of the Office on Women's Policy, I found it to be quite difficult on some levels to really scratch beyond the surface and discover the data. And we do use AAUW's data for some of our legislative advocacy. But relative to that particular issue, from the state perspective, we're taking a bipartisan approach, which I found that has been very helpful from the non-traditional sense. Like one of the things that we looked at, the governor about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we had the first ever Equal Pay Summit in Louisiana. And during that process, there was a very intense look at all of the parishes and all of the legislators that have traditionally opposed pay equity legislation in Louisiana. And so from that, I couldn't put my fingerprints on it as an appointed official, but I began to pull all of the data for campaign donors to the legislators who have traditionally opposed pay equity. And one of the things that I have been one of the things that I've been sharing with our various advocacy groups is the opportunity or the strategy to lean on the various individuals that are campaign donors to those legislators that have provided consistent and repeated hindering like behavior towards pay equity legislation. So we pulled all of the data. It's public record information. It's not private information at all. We just did the research to pull all of the 13 parishes that have traditionally opposed, the legislators who serve on the labor Senate, House and Senate labor committees, and looking at those who vote that continually kill these bills in the Louisiana legislature. And so we have that information available in our office. We've circulated it to a number of interest groups that could help lean on those campaign donors to lean on the members of the legislature that not only represent them, but that they contribute to encourage them to understand the values that we have, that they have towards women who may be their spouses or maybe their mothers or sisters. And so one of the things that we have pushed is that pay equity is not just a woman's issue. It's an economic issue. It's a family issue. It's a fairness issue. And when we talk about fairness, it's back to your example. And so often when I go to speaking engagements, I borrow from this TED Talk where there's these equal pay monkeys. I don't know if anyone in the room has seen it. It's a TED Talk. You can just Google it or look at YouTube. But there's these two monkeys, and I'll call one the female monkey and one the male monkey, but they're both gender ambiguous. And the job for the monkey is to give the researcher a rock. So when the researcher gives when the rock is given to the researcher, the first monkey is given a cucumber. Now at initial onset, the cucumber is just perfectly fine. But then monkey number 2 is given the task to be given a rock. The monkey gives the rock, and then in turn, equal pay monkey number 2 gets a grape. So then equal pay monkey number 1 begins to say, hey, the grape is a more desirable food, it's sweeter, it's better. But I did the same exact job. I gave him this rock. And so even primates, even those who don't have the intelligence of human beings can recognize when the equity is unbalanced and unfair and it's wrong. We're doing the same job. We should be compensated equally. So at this juncture, and I'll share this if I have another go round about how I'm just really encouraged to not give up. As you all know, in the legislature this year, we still didn't have pay equity legislation being approved. We could be that one state in the nation that, I don't want to go into it because I'll just start preaching, but we have an opportunity, and I don't want to give up. I've been fighting this fight for a decade and a half now, and so we have a tremendous opportunity, but pulling in new blood and being able to have the conversations that really matter with those who have the sphere of influences to truly implement change is where we are in Louisiana government. So grateful for a governor and first lady that get it, that has even in their own family seen, even at your event, the first lady shared the story about her niece who had a pay equity issue herself. And so it's indiscriminate of position or socioeconomic status or education. It's a real issue, and I think implicit bias has a great deal to do with the challenges that we see in inequitable pay. But I don't want to hog the mic, so I'll pass it on.
So tell me specifically, where can people get that information from you, and how can they know who to vote for or who not to? We want like concrete action from these. All these people need to perform these actions.
Yes, Shanta.Proctor@la.gov. We have not posted it, but we do have information in our office. And in addition to that, we're thinking about, prior to this upcoming legislation, if I can get the email addresses for the folks that attended here, my new boss and I have strategically discussed a statewide action specifically relative to the grassroots strategy for passing equal pay legislation in Louisiana. Just a very innovative way. 1,000 calls to your legislature and 1,000 emails to your legislator does not really impact, change, or influence the decision making, in my opinion. But dollars?
$1,000.
Yeah, the dollars, unfortunately, make a difference. We live in a society that is a capitalistic society. And one of the things that I mentioned this morning with the BPW group is the campaign ownership issue and how women still don't raise as many dollars for campaign contributions as the men do. There's a whole national organization that's committed to ensuring that women have equitable opportunities to fundraise in their campaigns. And so, yes, we have the information, and yes, we're putting together a statewide strategic plan to unfold this in each and every parish in the state. And so it's forthcoming. I'd be happy to get all the email addresses because we need your help and we need you on board.
You must really mean that because you gave everybody your email address, and I think there's some Facebook Live going on. So please hit her up because she's serious.
I am.
So, Dima, we talked a little bit about what actions people can take immediately. Like, what can they do right now in order to change their quality of living through making sure they're getting the right salary? Can you speak to that?
So I hear a lot of people talking about like enforcement by law, or having companies ensure that they're having the wage gap. But I am going to challenge everybody, because I believe that women, we don't ask for our worth, we don't negotiate, and most times we don't even know how much we should be asking for. So we are contributing to the wage gap. So you can hate me, but we are contributing to it. And I've seen it happen over and over, and it started with me. So when I got my job with IBM, it was after I finished my MBA. And they doubled the salary I was getting before, so I was so excited. And I, of course, in my MBA, the Master's in Business, I learned about negotiations. And I was like, maybe I should just practice negotiations. But something inside my heart was like, no, I'm not gonna negotiate. I don't wanna ruin the relationship with my new employer. I'm just gonna accept that. What if they reject me after I negotiate? What if they don't want me anymore? So I took the offer they gave me. And then a few months later, I was talking to one of my coworkers who we were in the same exact program. So they just select 8 MBA graduates for this program. We have similar qualifications, similar everything. And he was telling me how difficult it was for him to negotiate his salary. And I was listening, and then suddenly he told me how much he was making, which was $10,000 more than what I was making. So So I worked for IBM for 11 years, which means that's $110,000 that I missed out on. So I went home and I was like about to cry. I'm like, oh, wage gap, how dare IBM pay him more, $10,000 more, and I couldn't imagine what I could do with the $10,000, pay off my student loans, which I had tons of student loans, help more with the family. But then I really had a moment where I realized he negotiated. I did not. He knew his worth. He researched how much he should ask for. I did not. So we are all actively playing a big role with the wage gap. I remember I was here for another panel discussion a few years ago, and a young woman was sitting right there, and she directed a question to me, and she said, how would I explain to my daughter about the wage gap and how unfair it is? So I was surprised because she looked very young. She looked maybe 20, 21, and I asked, how old is your daughter? And she said, oh, I don't have a daughter yet, and I'm not dating, and I'm not pregnant, but I'm preparing for the future. So this is the challenge. We are preparing for the future of how to be in a victim mindset that, oh, poor us, we have the wage gap, instead of her asking a question like, how do I negotiate? Give me some tips to negotiate. Help me, I don't know, like ask me something else, but don't have me tell you about how to prepare your daughter, who we don't know if she's gonna even come to this world, of how she's gonna perceive the wage gap. So that is something I don't hear a lot of people talking about. We talk about the government, we talk about companies, how dare them, how horrible they are, but we are playing a role. That's one. The second one is think about like who calculates the wage gap and what is the formula that's being used. So it makes us so mad. Do you have the formula?
I do.
Yeah. So let me say, is it? So I always wonder, is the formula comparing a male doctor to a female doctor? Is the formula comparing all men how much they're making to all women how much they're making? That is something we need to be more clear about. Because if it's comparing all men to how much they're making to all women, well, men in our society so far, they are taking jobs that may make more money than women. So that could be part of it. But if you're putting a doctor to the side of another doctor, an attorney to the side of another attorney, like equal types of roles and skills, and then we're seeing a wage gap, then that's an issue. Go ahead. I'll have you.
Well, let me begin by saying we have identified three major causes for the wage gap. One of them is occupational segregation. Women have always participated in the workforce differently than men, and they've been treated differently than men. It's certainly women going into STEM fields and higher paying fields does help earnings, and it does help reduce it, but that is not it doesn't solve the whole problem, and I'll tell you why. Because there's a pay gap in each and every one of those occupations. So whether you're a doctor or an engineer or something, there's the pay gap there. But so women are overly represented in administrative support and nursing. Men are overrepresented in construction and engineering. So occupational segregation is a major cause of